Hello and welcome to the very first episode of The Real Crush. This is a brand new show for the Comic Crush. We're stepping out of our kind of comfort zone a bit. So instead of talking about comics and comic book based movies and TV, this show is going to talk about movies and TV in general. So we're going to be talking about the wider world of film and television. And there very probably won't be any comic book entertainment talk on this show. Although in the future we may be talking to some comic book creators about their favorite movies. That's part of the sort of ongoing plan for the show. So this is our very first episode, and I wanted to kick off with something really special. And I'm really lucky today to be joined by someone who you guys are probably familiar with if you've listened to some of the podcasts we did for Orbital. Because you'll know that every year we made a special effort to talk to Weng Yu from the Fighting Spirit Film Festival, which is an martial arts and action-based film festival that happens annually in Stratford. Now, after a sort of slight break over the pandemic, although I believe they did have a digital festival, Wen's going to talk to us more about that. After a slight break over the pandemic, the festival is back this year with not one but 2 dates. So normally there would be the show in London, in Stratford, which is going ahead in September. But this month, the end of April, they will be doing a show for one day only in Birmingham. And here to talk about it today is Weng Yu. Weng, how are you?
Good afternoon, Paul.
It's lovely to see
you. Evening,
It's,
morning, wherever your listeners are.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends when this goes out. But for us, it's the afternoon. It's a sunny-ish afternoon. But welcome to the show. It's great to have you back. I mean, I really missed talking to you. And I know it's normally yourself and Sue that we talk to every year. I've actually really missed talking to you guys over the last couple of years. And just by happenstance, we happened to bump into each other a couple of weeks back, which was lovely.
It was good timing as well.
It was very good timing, as it turns out, because you're going to talk to us about your show in Birmingham, which is coming up, and a little bit about the London show, we hope. So, but first of all, I mean, I've got to ask you, you took a slight break over the pandemic, but not a big one. I believe, was it of the sort of 2 years that we all that everything was going on, there was only 1 year where you couldn't have the festival. Am I right in saying that?
No, we did actually.
You did? You managed to have it?
We did do a very small one, yeah.
So I'm sorry. During the introduction, I apologise, folks.
It was a very small one. So it was, because Birmingham, we had to take a break because Birmingham we have done twice before.
Fantastic.
In 2018 and 2019.
Right.
But yeah, the London one, we still went ahead and did it, actually. We still managed to fit one in. Very small one. So if you're in the UK, basically, it was in between the 2 lockdowns. It was actually 3 days before the second lockdown.
Oh my God. So you actually managed to have a live in-person festival in that period?
Yeah, it's a very small one. It was just 1 day, because usually we'd have a whole weekend. But we kept it very small, obviously, because it was during pandemic times. And we managed to find a willing host in the wonderful Premier Cinemas in Romford, who just a big shout out to everyone there, including Spencer, who was amazing in helping us to facilitate it. And it was just a one full day event. So we had because we have a large short film program, and London is where we do the awards for that. So we showed our short film program in London, did that, and then we featured a British film called Tribal Get Out Alive, it's called, which is an indie horror action film, starring Zara Pythian, Thomas Dodds, who was his debut film, and it was directed by Matt Routledge, who are all fairly well known in the UK action scene.
Yeah,
well known, I should say. Zara was in Doctor Strange, as one of the acolytes in the first Doctor Strange. Thomas is new, but Matt's been around quite a long time, and is for some of the older people might know a film called Mersey Cop, I think it was called, that he directed many years ago.
Right.
Amazing director. Yeah, so we featured that, and we managed to have a little virtual Q&A with it as well. Well, Thomas actually came down from Liverpool to attend. And it wasn't without its challenges, but we still did it. Because I think for us, we're very committed to putting films on screen, especially short films, because I think for many, it's a funny thing, for many short filmmakers, a lot of them will never get to see their film on a proper cinema screen. Because it's with many short film festivals, some will put it on the cinema screen, some will be in sort of screening rooms or smaller areas, but we do a full cinema conversion. So we convert it to something called DCP, which is the digital cinema format, to project onto the screen. And we're really committed to doing that, because I just think there's a lot of filmmakers out there who would never get the opportunity to see their film on the big screen and get their friends or people just to see them on the big screen. So for us, digital wasn't really an option. And also it's really expensive to do a digital festival. Plus there are a multitude of security concerns that go with that when you have digital, especially at the time, because it was so new. I think there was a lot of issues in terms of copywriting, people able to download films from certain festivals, things like that, which did not go down well, which obviously won't go down well at all with the people involved in making the film and being in the film.
Completely. What were the sort of challenges of coming back to the live festivals this year?
Because we did London last year again.
Sorry, to the full scale.
To the full scale, yeah. I think we still, because it was September 20, it's always in September, the London Festival. So because it was in September, it's still not that far off when the lockdown, I think the second lockdown ended in April or end of March, if I remember correctly, something like that. So it's still not that far off, and there's still a lot of, Omicron, I think, was just starting to creep in at the time, and maybe a little bit later, but yeah, there was still a lot of concern about the pandemic. So we still did it. We actually managed to fill a 2-day program quite easily, actually, in the end, because we had some quite big sort of temporal releases, but we still kept it a little bit smaller. So we didn't have any vendors, because normally we'll have vendors who are selling merchandise, things like that. We didn't have any vendors, and we just, and we still did everything, but it was a bit smaller. And funny you say there's challenges. It wasn't actually that challenging to do it. I think to be honest, the biggest challenge is waiting for the cinemas to reopen, because cinemas didn't reopen straight away.
Yeah.
So for us, there was a lot of touch and go as to whether the cinema would be open in time and whether they'd be able to facilitate. I mean, luckily we have a great partnership with Picture House, and they're always very keen to have us there, which is excellent. But it's I think a lot for a while we were sort of wondering if we could do it just because do we need to find another cinema again? Do we need to go to Premiere again, for example, who are amazing, of course, things like that. But I think Stratford is our spiritual home, so we'd like to keep, obviously going back there is really good for us. And they always love having us there.
But we are here to talk about the Birmingham one, obviously, which is on the 30th of April, Saturday, the 30th of April. You've got a one-day event there. Now, what can people expect from this?
Well, I mean, the standard format of the festival is obviously to have features. We have demonstrations from martial artists as well in between, because we are a martial arts and action film festival. As you know, our goal is to inspire people using the medium of film, but with martial arts. Many of us, I think there's many people out there who watch martial arts films and are inspired to do martial arts as a result. It's a very big sort of subculture, and there's a huge cult following for martial arts films anyway, outside of Asia. So we had the martial arts demonstrations. What we usually do at Birmingham is we'll take the award-winning films from London the previous year and then screen them in Birmingham as well. So to open them up to a wider audience. And then 2 features, and we've had some pretty good features there. And this year we've got a couple of really big ones too. So it's definitely something, as a supplementary festival, it's very successful for us. And it's always been very well received. And we hope to keep it up this year, especially. And just coming back to Birmingham, actually, because it's been 2 years for Birmingham. So it's, I think they're missing us a little bit as well. So they want us back.
Yeah, I'm sure that is the case. I mean, it's important to have these cultural events outside of London as well as London. You know what I mean? It's otherwise it can kind of marginalise what's going on outside, and that's not the case. You did
Sorry,
just get the
I think...
big announcement of there's a big thunderstorm that's just suddenly kicked off outside. Here, I don't know what it's like where you are, but
I'm okay.
Yeah, so just as you were telling us about the festival, there's our audience might have been able to hear a nice big rumble of thunder.
Nice timing of drama there. We're not saying anything dramatic, are we? It's not too controversial.
No, not at all.
But yeah, building on your point is that when we do festivals outside of London, I think it's one of those things where, obviously London is a cultural hub for the UK generally, but going out of London, I think there's a lot of major festivals that don't travel outside of London, basically.
Yeah.
Many cultural ones as well. So for us to travel outside of London and be able to do something in the Midlands, I think that's it's just nice for people who just can't attend London, because I think it's not easy, right? It's difficult to make the journey, and it's a big commitment to sort of take the whole weekend off and come down to London for a festival. So it's good to have something that people are a bit easy to get to, so people in the north can travel there more easily, and obviously in the Midlands and so forth.
And I do want to ask, before we get onto the actual films that will be showing there, because I'm really excited to hear about those, is what made you pick Birmingham as the location for this sort of satellite festival?
I think it was just a bit of luck, to be honest, because we started looking outside of London, and then the Mockingbird came to us. There's Mockingbird Cinema came to us and said, "Look, we'd really love to have you at the Mockingbird," and it's an independent cinema based in the Custard Factory in Birmingham. It was quite new at the time when we went there. So it's not huge. I mean, the main screen is 100 seats, I believe. And they just added a second screen in the last year,
wonderful.
I believe.
Yeah.
But we're just taking the main screen this year. But it's good to support independent cinema, basically, just to be in a nice indie cinema. But yeah, they came to us, said they really wanted us, and were really helpful in facilitating everything. And they're always really, since the first one, they loved it, and they were really keen to have us back afterwards. So I'd say it's a lot of luck. I think, in these things, sometimes it's just timing. You just meet someone at the right time, and then something happens, and I think that was really how it came about.
That's great. It's a city that I've never been to, I have to say. It's terrible that in a country as small as England, there's a ton of places you just end up not kind of ever visiting. I've never visited Birmingham. It's not I don't intend to. I'd love to go there. Sorry, this storm is really kicking off now.
Yeah, I can hear it now.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear it now. Oh, Birmingham's a city on the rise, I think, because obviously it doesn't have the best reputation historically, but there's been a lot of redevelopment in the last few years. Do you know Ready Player One, the film Ready Player One?
Sure.
A lot of the outdoor driving scenes were filmed in Birmingham, in the Custard Factory, actually. Yeah, that area is called the Custard Factory, because it was
amazing.
Custard Factory there before. Obviously, it was a big industrial area, so that's a lot of the outdoor scenes that were filmed there. It's very noticeably Birmingham. You can, if you know the area, you can tell straight away when you watch it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and there's been major investment in the city in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. A lot of new developments, that sort of thing. So it's, I think it's really on its way up at the moment.
And now getting to the meat of it, the films. What are you going to be showing at the Birmingham Festival?
Yeah, so I was saying earlier, the timing is really good, actually, because we've just confirmed everything this morning. We had a bit of a palaver, but we managed to sort something out in the end. So one of the first feature we're going to screen is a film called Fu Stuntmen.
Right.
It's actually a documentary that's made by the Hong Kong Stunt Association. It's Fu Stuntmen Never Say No. And it's a really in-depth documentary about the Hong Kong action film industry. It starts in the 70s and then works its way through, sort of with Bruce Lee, talks about the Shaw Brothers era, obviously Jackie Chan as well, and covers that whole era. And it has interviews with many of the major names from that era too. So Sammo Hung, Yuen Wah, who's most recently in Shang-Chi. He was the old guy in the village who teaches Awkwafina how to shoot the arrows, or disapproves of her shooting the bow and arrows. So he's a legend of Hong Kong action cinema as well. Mars, who works extensively with Jackie Chan. You wouldn't know him straight away, but if you saw his face, if you've seen some films, you would recognize him instantly. And then Tim Gallock, who again is another, who's probably best known for Mr. Vampire. He was one of the main characters in that, which is an amazing action horror comedy, well known to fans of the genre. And his brother, I'm getting them mixed up now. Tin Silon, that was the one who was in Mr. Vampire. And Tim Gallock was his younger brother, who's also a very accomplished stuntman, actor, who's in a lot of films as well. So some really, really big names, and they tell lots of interesting stories about the era, the time, talk about some of the most dangerous stunts, or how films were made, and what the industry was like. It's really in depth. Talks about the dangers as well, the kind of things they went through physically to put on these films. Because if you've seen any Hong Kong action cinema, you'd know it's insane the stuff they do.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
it's incredibly dangerous.
I've seen a lot of it in sort of clip compilations and sort of documentary stuff on YouTube and things. Although I will confess, again, as I always say on whenever we do these interviews, it is a big hole in my film knowledge. And I think it's that thing of having the time to correct that, which I don't always have, sadly. But whenever I see it, I'm just in awe of not lunacy, but it is lunacy.
Well, I think they pushed the boundaries, didn't they? They nothing was too big, nothing was too crazy, and they just found a way to do everything. I mean, people died. People died filming that stuff.
God, that's horrible. I mean, but at the same time, there is a spectacular nature to it, an impossible, or it is a kind of sort of bridge to the impossible, and you're kind of looking at it, and it's just incredible stuff. Do you have favorites from that period? I know on previous episodes we have talked about your kind of favorites from the early years, and do those change? Is there anything that you see?
They never really, I guess they never really change, but sometimes I watch older films again and I appreciate them differently, because now obviously I'm more mature and I know more about filmmaking as well.
Right.
And sort of appreciate I think I appreciate the madness of it even more now, because I realize now, when I was young, it was just, people jumping around doing crazy stuff. I never really thought about how dangerous it was, or it was so death-defying what they were doing, and so innovative. Because I think that's one of the things they were able to do, because basically Hong Kong had no health and safety laws, and they didn't need insurance as well. Right? That was the other thing, because in America or in Britain, you need to have insurance to do stunts. Right? You need to. They won't let you do them, and generally the main actors aren't allowed to do stunts because, again, concerns about shutting down the film, insurance and stuff like that. Right? There's notable exceptions, but they're not. They wouldn't do stunts. But
surely, if a main actor on a Hong Kong film has an accident, that's still going to shut down the film, insurance or not. Like,
or they work around it.
Jesus.
Yeah, they work around it, or they have because that's happened a few times, and they did workarounds. I think quite famously, Jackie Chan broke his ankle filming Rumble in the Bronx.
Right.
So they couldn't film the ending, so they kind of improvised an ending. There is a very famous Hong Kong film called Once Upon a Time in China, which is the series that propelled Jet Li to stardom originally.
Right.
And during the filming of the first film, he broke his leg, I believe. So the entire final fight scene, he doesn't do any of it, actually.
Wow.
So they were very creative. They used stunt doubles. Yeah, it's very creative how they did it. I mean, it's an amazing. If you ever seen the film, it's an incredible fight sequence, the action sequence, incredible. But he didn't do any of it. The second and third film, he wasn't injured for that, so he did do that, but he didn't do any of it for the first film. And they just sort of filmed around it and figured out the angles and did close-up shots of his face in certain points to cut it in and out, to add to kind of keep that illusion going.
But even the inventiveness is impressive, right? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they were innovators, and I think a lot of people who haven't seen those films don't understand that. Because they don't appreciate, they just don't understand it. Because everything that is done in action cinema now, the inspiration comes from Hong Kong. All the ideas. You won't meet a person who is in action cinema right now who isn't a fan of Hong Kong cinema.
Right.
You just won't. Like, it's impossible. Every single one of them is a fan of Hong Kong cinema. Everybody knows. Everybody that makes films now, they're paying tribute to Hong Kong cinema in some way. With any action that's made now, because they innovated so much and they pushed the boundaries so much. And some of those films are 30, 40 years old now, and you still won't see anyone doing that stuff. You still won't see anyone doing it, basically. That's how innovative they were. And I think some of that stuff will never be recreated as well, I believe.
Right.
Because it's just so death-defying. Or it's a matter of, I mean, it's from that era, but I honestly believe that there's some scenes that will just, the quality of them will never be recreated, because I just think there's no one around who can do it anymore. Or has the same sensibilities to do
it. Moving away from the sort of the history of it, what other films are you showing at Birmingham? So it's more modern stuff that you're
not this time round. We have, but this time we're going with another classic because well, we've been negotiating for quite a while, but yeah, because one of our things is we always show classic films.
Yeah.
So we show new films always as well, but we always show classic films because those films just don't go in the cinema anymore. So we just secured we've just managed to secure the agreement to screen Drunken Master 2, which was released in the West as The Legend of the Drunken Master.
Right.
So that film came out in 1994, and it is a sequel to the original Drunken Master, which was made 16 years before that, I believe. I think 79 or 80 would have been 79 or 78, perhaps, which is one of the films that propelled Jackie Chan to stardom originally. The original Drunken Master. So this is a sequel to it. Personally, it's my favorite Jackie Chan film. It's probably one of my top 10 films of all time, actually. And many people see that as the pinnacle of Jackie Chan's work, like the best film that he made. All the films that he made, that's probably the best one. And this will be the first ever screening of the HD restoration in the UK.
Oh, congratulations! That's great.
Yeah, because it's been very hard to figure out how to screen. It's been very hard to figure out how to get it on the screen, basically, because for people who don't know, like, there's always a matter of who owns the rights to the film, like cinema. Because you need to show a film, you need to pay for the right to screen it, or you need to have an agreement to screen it. And rights are very complicated because every territory has their own agreements. There's something like 300 territories around the world, and you have to make an agreement with every single one of them when you're distributing the film out, for example. So it's never so easy saying, we want to show that, let's show it. We have to talk to who owns the rights, who can agree it. And even with some older films, actually, no one knows who holds the rights. There's films I've been chasing for 2 or 3 years, and we still haven't figured out who owns the rights for them, for example.
Oh, man.
So it can be very complicated, but this one
must be so frustrating.
Yeah, it is. And I'll be honest, this one's a bit of a golden goose for me, actually, because I've been after this. I've wanted to show this film ever since I started doing it, because, as I said, it is one of my top 10 films of all time, and it's been tied up in. It's basically been tied up in the sort of limbo for years, because it's actually owned by Warner,
right?
Who don't traditionally deal with Hong Kong action. So generally you have the standard distributors for Hong Kong action. They are not. So it's actually and then it was on hold for many years, and they never really, because it hasn't actually been released in HD here. The HD restoration came out about 3 or 4 years ago in Hong Kong. And I think it's out in America now, but it's never been released in here.
And are you showing it ahead of a sort of home release or a reissue?
That I do not know.
Right.
So I don't want to say anything because I cannot confirm or deny it.
Okay.
I just can't. No, I'm kidding. I can't confirm it. Basically, I don't know. we've managed to secure the agreement, but that's all we know. So they don't tell us if it's going to be released or not.
Well,
I would suspect that maybe, because usually they don't agree to it unless there might be something coming, but I couldn't say yes or no either way. So I think there's a possibility, but I don't want to commit to it.
Even so, congratulations. That's a big get, and
thanks.
It sounds
it's a big one.
It sounds deeply personal for you.
And it is, and it's an amazing film with a really interesting history and backstory as well. Because actually it was two directors who worked on the film actually rather than one, because the original director was Lau Garland, who's a legend of Hong Kong cinema, who was a choreographer, director, started with Shaw. He's also grandmaster, kung fu grandmaster as well, amazing choreographer. And he was the original director, but then Jackie sort of fell out with him. They were constantly at loggerheads. And I think afterwards they described it as two tigers on the same mountain, working on the film. So 2/3 of the way through, Lau Garland left the production and Jackie took over and finished the rest of it. Because back then films were shot chronologically. And it's quite obvious where the difference is, because the earlier fight scenes are a bit more traditional kung fu based, and the final fight scene is a pure Jackie Chan balls to the wall action. A lot more. It's shot very differently and cut very differently. So it's actually, in a way, it's like almost like it shows the contrasting, the different styles that were around at the time. Because I think Jackie was known for sort of quicker editing, much quicker movements, things like that. Whereas Lau Garland came from the traditional era where it was more kung fu based, the action that he shot, whereas Jackie was more stunt based.
It sounds great. It sounds absolutely amazing. And I had no idea of that sort of backstory behind it. What else can we expect at the festival?
So the other thing we're going to do is, obviously, as I said earlier, we'll take the winning short films from last year and screen them. We're also going to have a conversation with, we're going to put on a conversation with some local filmmakers with that. So there's a local director called Ranji S. Marwan, who's made a couple of features. His newest features called Rupture, with starring Mark Strange, who is, again, British martial artist. He is probably best known more recently for being in Ip Man 4 with Donnie Yen.
Right.
And he also, what was it called? I'm just going to double check the name now, so I'm going to make sure I get it right. So he had a recent a fairly successful cinema run with a British horror film called Redcon 1.
Okay.
That came out in 2018. It was in cinemas, and that was quite successful as well. So Ranji's got his new feature coming out. So the film isn't out and isn't finished yet, but we'll sit down with him and one of the lead actors, who's called Nick Khan, another local guy from Birmingham, and the local martial artist stuntman as well. So we'll sit down and have a conversation with them, talking about films, and obviously they're local to Birmingham too. So it will be good for the community to come and see some local stars, local filmmakers and actors in person. So I think that will round off the festival. So there'll be 3 sections, and it will cover from about 3 o'clock till the evening.
That's great. I mean, it sounds like a full program of varied stuff, which is what you want at any film festival. Does it get difficult to kind of filter it down to just a couple of choices, in terms of the sort of big films? Is that a difficult process for you and everyone involved?
It can be. I think funny enough, we've always been quite lucky with Birmingham that there's been something big that's come out around every period when we've done it,
right?
Or something major that it would be seen as a sort of tentpole release. In the first year, we did Accident Man with Scott Adkins, and Scott Adkins is a very well-known British martial artist, action star. Very beloved in the action world. I think he's got something like 4 million fans on Facebook now, 2 million followers on Instagram, something like that. So Accident Man was a passion project that Scott produced himself and wrote himself. And then that came out just just before. Well, that was coming out around the time of the first Birmingham Festival. So, and he is local to Birmingham as well. So we were able to put that on, and Scott appeared and did a Q&A as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was amazing to have him because it was the first time we worked with him, and we have worked with him subsequently since then as well on many other screenings. Scott's also he was in Ip Man 4 as well with Donnie Yen. He was also in Doctor Strange as one of the acolytes as well. You know, for people who don't know action cinema so well, but he's a very, very popular star, and he's been very supportive of the festival throughout. He's a patron of the festival now as well. But it was just so interesting seeing someone like Scott come, because I remember this really clearly, because when he appeared, every time he's come to a festival, like we will get messages from fans saying, "Is Scott really going to be there? Is you know, are you sure he's going to come?" And we're like, "Yes, you know, he's booked in. He's definitely coming." And I could see people. You know, there are people who idolize him so much, and I remember so clearly, like seeing sort of young. I remember seeing one young guy. I can't remember his name now. Really lovely kid. He must have been about 19 or 20. Really young guy, and he was trembling when he went to speak to Scott because he idolized him so much. Yeah, so things like that, they always make me think it's worth it doing it.
Absolutely, yeah, like completely. Oh man, that's amazing. I mean, congratulations to you guys for pulling this off and getting it done and getting out there every year now, you know, for 2 festivals. I think it's an amazing feat.
I've got to get you to one of them soon, right?
Well, yeah, we're talking about it. I might be there at Stratford to you know, show people some very action orientated comics.
Yeah, well, hopefully, yeah. Well, we'll, you know, we definitely want to have you there. So.
I definitely want to come. It sounds like fun, and also I miss you know, back when I used to work in cinemas. I used to be there for Fright Fest, which would be over the August bank holiday, and that was always a lot of fun. And I've got to say, the audience were always although it was busy and it was a very intense period, and you had to be on all the time. The audience were lovely.
Like the people that, and I think you get that with niche festivals like ours, or you know, very specific themed festivals. Because you know, I think a lot of these people, they're just really grateful to be able to see films in the cinema.
That's
also,
it. And
and have other people like them in the cinema with them. You know, because I always, you know, I think I often say to people, like, you don't appreciate it until you actually go and see it for yourself, especially with something like Fright Fest or what we do, or the Sci-Fi Film Festival, you know, because the fans are so hardcore and they get really into it. So the atmosphere of the screenings is often a lot more. There's a lot more excitement, and the people who watch are a lot more into the films. You know, I would say it's almost like it's a lot more raucous than if you go to a normal cinema screening. You know, people will be cheering, clapping, laughing. You know, like just like, you know, shouting out things and stuff like that. Like it's a really fun experience, I think. In comparison.
I love that atmosphere. And I actually did get to sit into a couple of the screenings in Fright Fest, and it you know, it is an amazing atmosphere.
And the people go crazy on the screens, right?
Yeah, it's great.
It's mad, isn't it? The people, they go crazy in the screens.
Will you actually get to watch Drunken Master 2 at Birmingham, or do you have to sit out of it? Are you?
I can watch the films if I want to. It depends on how many people come, obviously, because you know, we need spare seats. But I usually, if it's sold out, I usually sort of stand at the back and watch for a bit, or you know, pop in and out, because normally I'm doing kind of organizing stuff in between or packing stuff up or things like that. But I usually pop in some films I make an exception for. So I might make an exception for this one because it is, as I said, one of my top 10 films of all time. Does just watch the action scenes.
Does it get any easier doing this?
It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah,
it does.
It does. It's really, really hard at the beginning, because for us, we were all mostly going in blind, because Sue, the founder and director, she worked in cinema for a long time, but the rest of us haven't. You know, we have a core team of volunteers, as you know, so because none of us, we're all doing it voluntarily at the moment. So obviously Sue, and then I'm the assistant director. We have Will, our programmer, who's hopefully going to appear on The Real Crush sometime in the future.
I hope so. That's the
he's quite keen.
That'll be the next interview we do for the Stratford shows. I'd love to
Yeah,
have him
and
on.
he's an amazing guy because he, as a one of the things I always say about him is his film knowledge is just unbelievable. Like we call him Will IMDb as a nickname because he just knows everything, or he can find everything. His ability to research is unparalleled. I think it's incredible. And everything, not just like action cinema, kung fu cinema. Obviously, he loves kung fu cinema, but generally cinema as a whole, he's very encyclopedic knowledge of film. So Will's our
I think I'm
programmer.
definitely going to love talking to him.
Yeah, so Will, and then we have Tim who does our technical stuff, technical director, Ez and Claire who arrange our demos and do the outreach and some of the admin, and then Jessa who's our social media guru. And I think it's there's Alara who does our photography as well. But I think at the beginning, for all of us, it was a very steep learning curve.
Right.
For the team, and I think so. I have knowledge of events or event organization previously, so I knew how to run events. But I think previously Sue and I were sort of doing a lot of it, and then everyone else were telling them what to do. Whereas I think now we've been together as a team for this is the 7th year of the festival now, so the team all know what to do and they can all handle themselves and any problems that come up. So it has become easier because it leaves more time for myself and Sue to focus on the organizational aspects or trying to expand the festival. Because we do want to expand to more cities and we are investigating that at the moment. So a lot of our energies are based around doing that. When it's, when we don't have events coming up, obviously we have an event coming up, so we've got a lot to do, but there is, I think even on event days as well, the staff are amazing now and the team are amazing, so they can handle so much now. Whereas before it was definitely a case of learning and running around panicking sometimes or things like that, trying to figure out what the best logistics are or the best way to do things. And every year we get smoother and smoother. And it's great because then we can add things as we go on, because we know we can handle this stuff now. So it means that we can do different things and try and do more and just improve as we go along.
And I suppose you don't want it to become too relaxed and too easy, right? I mean, you've always got to be challenging yourself.
Yeah, that'd be nice though, but yeah. Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to do that. But yeah, it's true. I think ultimately for us, we want to create a great experience for everybody, including ourselves. That's the whole thing of, I think, our mantra from the beginning, we have a few keywords such as promote, connect, inspire. And I think those keywords always resonate in our head because when we started this thing, we wanted to inspire people using film. We want to inspire people using martial arts. We want to promote people doing those films. We want to connect those people together, whether they be fans, whether they be people in the industry. We always say the short film program is the most important part of our festival, and it always will be, because that's where the new talent comes. That's where the new talent comes from. Those people who are making those films. And I think that many of the people who have been involved in the festival, if you ask them, they will tell you that we've done as much as we can to promote them, and a lot of them have gone into bigger things, or have had, had a lot of opportunities that have come from, being in the festival. I know for a fact that Scott has put quite a few of the people he's seen in the festival in films that he's made since then.
Oh, amazing!
Since he became involved, for example, so he's worked with quite a few of those guys and girls, and you can see many of them in some of his films. So I think that there is, I think that is a really key aspect for us. I haven't stressed it that much so far, but the short films for us, they are the lifeblood of the festival, and they are what we want people to see, and what we promote the strongest, I think. As otherwise we're just showing films, and I think it gives us more purpose, and it gives us gives us something to because we want to introduce a new generation of action stars to people, basically to our fans, or to fans generally. So we are always trying to promote people and promote things and do what we can. I think, last year we had the UK premiere of The Paper Tigers, which is just an amazing film. You should definitely watch it if you haven't seen it yet.
I haven't. I'm sorry. As I said, it is shamefully a gap in my film knowledge. But you're in good company because there's a ton of French movies I've never watched either.
Yeah, well, I haven't watched a ton of French movies either, to be fair. But yeah, like The Paper Tigers was an indie film from America. They crowdfunded the film because the director was a Vietnamese director, Bao Tran. And when he wanted to make the film, no studios would fund him because he refused to make white people the leads, basically, because he wanted the leads to it's two Asians. The main lead's two Asian actors and a black actor. So
yeah, and I imagine that's got to be an important part of it for filmmakers. Is that it's got to represent the experience they grew up with, and understandably so. And I think the thing is, every culture and every country has entertainment that's indigenous to itself and reflects itself.
Yeah,
and
those minority stories are part of that country's culture, whether they like it or not.
Absolutely,
I think. Yeah. So yeah, the film they had to crowdfund the film in the end, but they made the film. It's a really great film because it's not. I would say it's not a pure martial arts film. It's more of a comedy drama, actually. So it's very much like Karate Kid. Karate Kid's this amazing underdog comedy drama story. Underdog story, and The Paper Tigers is very similar in that sense. It's very charming. It's very, very funny. It also stars Master Ken. I don't know if you know Master Ken from the
I don't
comedy videos. Yeah, he's very popular. Like, he makes these comedy videos of called Enter the Dojo. He's a hilarious guy.
I'm sure I'll be looking him up tonight.
Yeah, have a look. He's hilarious. But he's in it as well. The actions. And I think one of the things they did as well, which I think a lot of people miss at the moment, or a lot of action films miss the mark with, is that action has to tell a story. And I think, that's the other thing that comes out when you watch Hong Kong films, is the action is part of the storytelling. Because people always think storytelling is, people talking or things happening, certain things happening in the film, but the action always tells a story.
Yeah.
So in Hong Kong films, generally, the action always has its own narrative. And I think that's missed a lot in Western filmmaking. They have action for the sake of having action, but the action doesn't have a narrative attached to it. It's sort of action for the sake of action. So that was one thing with The Paper Tigers, is that the storytelling in the action is really clear, and it's really obvious as well. And I'm just trying to think of a good example of action storytelling now to try and explain it better. It's almost like watching wrestling. You ever watch wrestling?
Okay, so I'm probably going to lose some of my already small audience saying this, but I'm not a fan of wrestling. I've certainly been.
That's fine. You don't have to be. Yeah, you don't have to be. But with wrestling is storytelling, action storytelling, actually.
Sure.
Because wrestling always has a storytelling.
That's actually a really interesting way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think. So a good example of a film that doesn't tell a narrative is Atomic Blonde. I always go back to Atomic Blonde. It's because the action's amazing, but it doesn't. The story doesn't affect it, and the action itself doesn't really make you. It doesn't take you to a place where you're seeing a really clear storyline, because you don't really care about the characters if you watch the film. Like, you're just like, wow, the action's great. Technically, it's really good, but you don't really care about the characters because nothing happens there that makes them relatable.
Right.
Whereas I think if you go back, like, I was just trying to think now. If you think of something like Big Trouble in Little China, for example, which is one of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah.
The action is completely designed around the characters. Because Jack Burton, who's Kurt Russell's character, is a clown who just talks a lot, right? And he basically messes up in the entire film constantly because he can't fight as well as everybody else, right? So he's always getting beaten up and losing, and he isn't even in the final action sequence because he knocks himself out before the fight begins. While all the other guys are like. Yeah,
generally one of the great moments in cinema, I think.
Yeah, it's it's an amazing film. It's such a great film. But the action is designed around the narrative of the film. So when the action happens, it happens for a reason. And then you see the character progression through it, right? And then some bits they don't even need to show, but you can know that there's something happening. There's the one of the fights between, I think it's Wang and the guy who inflates and blows up. At the end, who's played by Carter Wong, who's a legend as well. half of that fight they didn't even show it, because that was kind of it was specifically done that way to create a kind of comedic aspect
Yeah.
to it. And then, also, and then he kind of comes running out, and then they're like, oh my God, then there's more trouble happening after that. But there's, so it's all designed very specifically. And I think it's why it works so well as a film, because everything's glued together very nicely. Whether you like and I often think of something like John Wick as well. When you think of John Wick, I appreciate why people like John Wick so much. I really do. And I think that technically they're amazing films, but sometimes the story doesn't really connect with the action.
Yeah.
So I think that there can be disconnects. And I think that's why people don't like it at the same time. So that's the one thing when you look at Asian action films more, because Asian action films, they always create the characters, they always create the storylines, then they always build the narrative through the films. And sometimes they'll beat up some minions and then the big bad guy comes, for example. So you have a narrative, or they're not always just winning and beating guys. Like, it's not just like Arnie trampling through like 100 guys with a giant shotgun and like beating a few people up and never getting touched. It's not like that. Or The Rock nowadays has a clause in his contract saying he can't lose in films. Things like that,
which I find insane. What was the other clause from Fast and Furious? They have to hit each other the equal amount of times.
Yeah, equal hits or something like that. And again, Vin Diesel can never lose a fight in the films and things like that. And again, the problem is that creates like an unrealistic background. For them. Obviously, I'm not gonna. I quite like the Fast films generally. I think
I'm not.
Generally, they've gone a bit crazy recently, but I think they're just like they're what they are. They're entertaining films with sort of crazy stuff in it and all that. But the action doesn't really. It doesn't. The action looks amazing, but there's no connection to any storyline, and there's nothing that really makes you feel anything, I guess. You just watch it and you're like, wow, that's so cool. Like, they did this crazy stuff, and that looks amazing, and that looks amazing. If I think of the final scene in Police Story, you've probably seen a video of it where Jackie Chan slides down this pole through a shopping center, and it's like 5 stories that he goes down on this pole. He does it because the bad guy's at the bottom, and he needs to get down there ASAP to stop him from running away. So it's like one of the craziest stunts in history, one of the most dangerous stunts ever made. But there's a legitimate setup for it,
right?
And just before it, you can see you can tell he's terrified just before he does it. And they have the shots of him, those shots of him, they're actually really real, because they're actually real shots of him looking absolutely terrified and thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I've got to do this, and that makes the stunt more crazy, because the realism of it, and it's so much more believable, because he's in the entire film, he's pushed to this point of desperation at the end, where there is only one way he can get this bad guy, because he's just been, he's been suspended, he's been punished multiple times for trying to go after this guy. He's tried to do it with the law and he can't do it, so he has to go outside of the law almost to do it. So you have that, it's a culmination of everything that happens in the film, so it has a real purpose to it. So anyway, that was a bit of a long rant.
No,
not rant, but that was a bit of a long exposition about action cinema. But anyway,
you get what I'm talking about. I think it's fantastic, and I think one of the interesting things to see you in is your enthusiasm and your passion for it. And I always find that infectious. It's whether people are talking about film, comics, television, anything. It's their passion must become infectious, and yours certainly has been. And I really want to thank you for kind of taking the time out today and talking to us about the Birmingham Festival. So the Birmingham Festival, Saturday 30th of April. If people want to get tickets, where can they go? We'll put a link in the description if we can.
Yeah, we haven't released them yet because, as I said, we've just finalised everything today.
Just finalised, right?
But it should be up in the next few days once we make the full announcements on social media. Cool. So I would say follow us on social media first, Fighting Spirit Film Festival, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're on all 3. Just search for Fighting Spirit Film Festival and you can find us very easily. The first one that comes up.
And I will also our web.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. There's also our website as well, fightingspiritfilmfestival.com, which I will update once everything's done as well. And that also has information on previous festivals and the lineups we've had in previous festivals as well.
Fantastic.
And I will get that up as soon as I can. You know, it's like you got me just after we confirmed everything. So you got
Yeah,
the
sorry.
exclusive for the real crush.
This
You
kind
know,
of, we had a sort of narrow window of time where we were both available to do this. So, and as I said, I have missed having the conversation with you guys in the last couple of years because
it's been 3 years. Was it the last time we talked?
Man, I think so.
About festivals, but 3 years when we did the last pod.
I remember it being
2019,
it was a beautiful day, and I came to the Curzon to talk to you and Sue, and I think that year, later on that year, was the sort of beginnings of COVID, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I'm sure that was 2019, just before festival.
Yeah.
That was such a big festival for us. It was a huge festival. It was the
yeah.
biggest one we'd done, and the turnout was, we had over 1,000 people, I think, over the 2 days. So
That's amazing.
Crazy the amount of people that came.
And you know,
I'm just trying to get that back.
I really wish you every success, and I hope it continues going, and I hope it gets bigger and bigger, and I hope it always gets bigger.
Yeah, no, obviously, thank you for the support as well.
For what support we can give, we're always happy to give. Because it sounds like funny, and I think you guys are great, and I love what you're doing. As I said, even if it's not a form of cinema that I often get to see, I absolutely do want to support it, because just the wide variety of things out there for people. Like, I mean, it's fantastic. So thank you very much for letting me talk to you about this stuff, and for giving me the chance to do that. I really appreciate it.
No, obviously I appreciate being here too, and I look forward to coming back at some point.
Yeah,
I'm going to give you all the exclusives. Yeah,
anytime you want. Anytime. No,
yeah, we'll try and find the next one with all the exclusives.
It'd be lovely. No, it's always great to have you here. So that's Saturday, 30th of April, and as I said, if you come back to us, because this is going out as soon as possible. But so maybe a few days after you watch this, folks at home, you can come back and double check the links. And I will re-promote this podcast on the Twitter, on the Facebook, on the Insta, and put those links on wherever possible. So you can grab your tickets as quickly as you can.
Oh, and the last note, London will definitely happen in September. It'll either be first or second weekend. We haven't. Obviously, I can't say yes or no yet because the date is still needs to be fully confirmed, but it's always in September every year. We make sure that it's always in September, like the first half of September. So, people want to start thinking about London or thinking about putting something in their diaries, it will definitely be during the first half of September.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to being there.
I really want to have you there, man, because it's been a long time coming. So I really want to get you there. And
I'd love to. And I've missed being in public shows, like doing like we used to do the cinema things for all the time. We lost that opportunity, sadly.
Because you always have those stalls set up for the big premieres, don't you, or the big releases. And I know you get a lot of really cool people there trying to come and see you as well.
It's great, and it's just that opportunity to get out and talk to people about the stuff you're doing, as hopefully this has given you. So again, we're out of here, but you can get tickets to that festival as soon as possible. Just want to say a quick thank you to all the patrons. The shows and the website would not be possible without you. There is stuff on the Patreon now, if you want to jump on, depending on what tier you're on. And Liz and I are hopefully we've been sort of slightly derailed by a few things that are kind of happening in our lives at the moment, but we'll kind of be back on it in the next couple of weeks, and we should have two shows this week. Moon Nighting.
Two for the price of one. Two for the price of one. Yeah. Three for the price of one.
Moon Nighting on Friday, episode 2 of that, and Crushing Comics, which I think is episode 8 or 9, I want to say. But so that'll be on this weekend if you're watching those, and you can find those all on the YouTube channel or on Spotify and Apple. Wayne, thank you very much for your time. Please give my best to Sue. I hope to get to chat to her again soon.
I'll tell her to make an appearance again.
That would be great. But thank you so much for doing this. To everyone watching and listening on the podcast,